States go by here. Today I am going to replace the rear coil springs on my 70 Chevelle. It's pretty much the same procedure for any of your any Chevelle, most of your Camaros, anything with the trailing arm type suspension uses a coil spring, as in no leaf springs. Same basic procedure. This one happens to be on a 70 Chevelle. So after I replace all the bushings and stuff and box the lower A-arms, the back end is just setting way too low. These springs, the old springs, are just worn out. You can see on the left is the old spring, one of the old springs. On the right is one of the new springs. These are Mog heavy duty. We'll see how they set. Supposedly they set pretty well, and they're pretty cheap. They're like 55 bucks for two rear springs, which is pretty good, assuming they fit and everything, which we'll find out at the end of the video. So that's what they look like. When you install them, you'll notice the old springs are there's no difference in the coils as far as the separation. That's a standard non-progressive spring, I believe, is what you refer to it as. So it just solid, same amount of pressure going down. It's consistent going down. This one is a progressive spring. It will initially give more, and then it'll tighten up. You'll hit the harder springs and the different coil range here, and it will compress less as it gets more weight. So I'm hoping that'll help the stance of the Chevelle a little bit. I have already put one in, so this is basically one is in place, and it's pretty easy to do. I mean, it took me like 30 minutes. It takes no time at all to pull the old one out and the new one in. I will give you a couple tips. A lot of your instructions will tell you to jack the whole car up and then use like your jack or something underneath the rear end in the middle at the diff to raise and lower it to put pressure, take the pressure off the spring and stuff. Well, you've got that brake line, and you may or may not be able to see it back there. If you follow this, it'll go up, and there's a brake line right there. Alright, if you lower the whole rear end, you got to watch that and make sure you don't put too much pressure on it, because you could bust it. So I'm doing one at a time, and I'm bringing it out the wheel well right through here. The shock does slide over, and I had no problem with doing that. So that is how I recommend doing it. And as you can see, it is in place. So the things that I did, jack the side of the car up. I do have a jack stand under it to help, just in case the jack slips or something, it's going to catch on the jack stand. I did take the wheel off, and the shock is off. Now you may be wondering what's holding this up. Well, it is actually the A-arms. There comes a point where they're not going to let it go any lower, and that lets you pull the wheel off. So I loosened it while the wheel is still touching the ground, but then when the wheel came up off the ground, then I pulled it off. So that's the basics on how to get to that point. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the wheel back on, lower it enough to get the shock on, and then lower this side, and I'm going to raise the other side, and I'll show you what I did to get the spring out, the old spring out and the new spring in. It's pretty simple. Okay, the left side's done, driver's side. Now I'm on the right side, the rider's side, and which way you look at. I've jacked up the car, got a jack stand below it. I've removed the wheel. I have unbolted the shock. There's a nut and washer there that hold the shock in. That's all you got to do to remove it, is unbolt those, pull it out, do it when it's extended, but isn't carrying the weight of the axle, and that's not that difficult. I think you can figure that out. And I will tell you that these springs are both, the new and the old, are 14 inches tall, and at the distance that I'm getting on both sides with just the axle hanging is 14 inches. So I have a crowbar. This is actually a one for roofing, but it works. What I do is hook it under here, and I will lift. Now, I will caution you, watch the brake lines here and here. Don't lift on those. You don't want to smash them. I'm getting really close on this, so I'm going to have to move it a little bit. And I'm really going to have to use two hands, but I wanted you to see what I'm using. And I highly suggest, eye protection. I'm wearing gloves because these springs are under some pressure. I will tell you, the other side came out really easy. It was nothing to pull up, lift up, and slide it off. This one I think will be the same way now that I think I just loosened it. But it is going to take two hands. And I don't have a camera person, so I'm going to basically lift up, and I'm going to have a hand here to pull it, and I'm going to pull it right out this direction. That's where I'm going to pull it out. Alright, so I got the spring bottom out. Now what I'm going to do, it's a lot easier with two hands, but we'll see. I'm going to pull it towards the left side. That is, the spring will just come right out. So, there we go. And there it is. The plate, the little rubber plate. This goes on the, I guess if I keep it in the camera, this goes on the top. Right there. And that's what isolates, that's what keeps the noise from traveling to the body of the car, is that insulation. That's one of the polyurethanes. If you saw my video on replacing the bushings, rear bushings, you've seen that already. So these new springs are very much straight, up and down. When you spin them, it doesn't move. They're straight up and down. So I don't think it matters which way I put them in. These have flat. It's flattened here, so again, there's no placement for the end. Some of your cars may have that. Look on the perches right here to see if there's like an indentation where you would put the end of that coil. And yeah, I won't get into the theory of how coils actually work. Most people think they just compress. They actually spread out while they compress. But anyway, as you can see, the original ones, they didn't exactly set straight, but alright, so now I'm going to take, and these new ones, by the way, are much heavier. It's a much thicker coil that's used. It looks like the other side is setting 1 inch higher than my old springs were. But bear in mind, my old springs are worn out. So my guess is I'll show you what I'll give you a good view of the top of the wheel arch to the tire when I'm done. But you basically put your insulator here, and like I said, these are actually a little heavier. And so I'm going to slide them in, and I am going to have to use two hands. Sorry, I was hoping to be able to show you. But you can see there's a pad right there, and that's where I'm going to slide the top into that. And then I'm going to use the crowbar and a tip here on the crowbar, slide it in the other way, so down here, and then slip it over that way, not that way. It worked better for me on the other side. So let me get the spring at least started here. So the top piece is in, the top end. Hopefully you can see it in there. All right. The bottom is in part way. And as you can see, I got the crowbar under it. And what I do is I lift up here and then I hit it with with my hand to knock it onto the perch. That's how I get it on there. And there it is. It's on. You can turn it some while it's got no weight on it and the shock's off, because there's very little pressure. I say there's very little pressure. There's still some. I'd bet you there's at least 30 pounds on it at full length there, as far as mine would drop. So you still got to watch your fingers. Do not get your fingers caught underneath this or at the top. That would mess up your day. So be careful when you do it, but that's how you do it. Now what I will do is I'm going to put the tire on, then lower it. I lower it right up until the bottom of the shock lines up with the shock mount hole. I'll then attach that and then lower it all the way and make sure, double check my work, make sure everything's good, and then job done, baby. Oh yeah. Cool. And like I said, I'll show you what it looks like at the end. So here's the height on the rider side, at least. You can see it's an inch, maybe wheel well higher than the tire. This is a 275 60 15. So you can get an idea of it. And it's a little, I think it's about an inch maybe higher than